Welcome to TradFi to DeFi, a community-driven podcast about crypto and decentralized finance. This is Tyler Sherwin, and I'm joined by Jon Reynolds. Together, our goal is to teach, encourage, and inspire you to seize opportunities in this emerging world of DeFi. Let's get started. Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the TradFi to DeFi podcast. I couldn't be more excited for one of our guests today who we have with us, Farmer Jon, who is on this call as our co-host. Jon Reynolds and I are very excited. I might call him Farmer Jon on this call because we have another Jon in our group, Jon Reynolds. He is a Web3 investor and operator. I've known him for a while. Jon is one of our earliest community members, bringing so much value to the community. We've been dying to have this podcast for a very long time. So, Farmer Jon, I'm pretty stoked. How are you stoked? Are you feeling like as excited as I am? This has been a while.
I'm definitely looking forward to it because Jon has always brought a special level of energy to our group. And he always has something thought-provoking, something interesting, and you'll go away at least with something to think about, maybe take some action.
Yeah, Jon has been the source of some of my best alpha, especially in the NFT space. So without further ado, Jon, welcome to the podcast. We're so glad to have you.
Hey guys, yeah, been a long time coming. Pretty impressed that you've actually managed to roll out the podcast in addition to everything else that you guys are doing at TradFi to DeFi. So super appreciative of your guys' work here because it makes it a lot easier for people like myself who are really trying to execute on things and network and build when there's a structured community that you're able to operate within and be able to really talk to some really smart people. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much for saying that, Jon. We really are a result of the community, you being a very strong member of that. So thank you as well for making it what it is today. So why don't we just start kind of at the beginning? I think we all have a similar rabbit hole journey. I'd love to know a little bit about just what was that first light bulb moment that got you into crypto from the very beginning?
Yeah, so it's funny because a lot of people have these stories where they're like, oh, I heard about crypto in 2012, but I didn't do anything. And then 2015 came around and then I did it. It's like, no, that's not what happened for me. Like, and it definitely seems to be a bit of a minority. No, in mid 2017, I was working in the medicinal cannabis industry in Los Angeles. They were transitioning from medicinal to recreational, and it was the largest market opportunity that I was aware of at the time in terms of a new market coming to existence. Long story short, did the whole thing, had a whole vertical in cannabis, was distributing it in LA and in Los Angeles, and then regulation basically pushed that off the edge of a cliff. And I asked my co-founder, what's a comparable market to medicinal to recreational marijuana that's growing at a same or faster pace? He said crypto, and immediately just sort of dove into it full time. So as sort of a life raft from cannabis, which was very risky, went into a different risky thing, but it was something that I saw as having full horizontal and vertical applications. So across multiple industries and throughout each part of the supply chain in each industry, the data and the value would likely be within or touch a blockchain in the future. So the co-founder at that point basically put me onto a group of high net worth individuals who were looking to invest. They were looking to invest in like mid-December of 2017. So when things were going basically straight vertical, told them not to, they waited, everything crashed. They were like, that's great. And then they gave me a 6-month contract to deep dive into Ethereum. Everything from that taught me that I needed to basically surround myself with as many subject matter experts as possible, because the joke in crypto is you're never going to understand everything. It's like, it's everything you don't understand about economics mixed with finance, mixed with computer science, mixed with anthropology, or philosophy, depending on how you do it. So I just started networking and basically never looked back at that point. I can continue that story, but that's a pretty common one that I can tell for 2-3 minutes, depending on how long that actually was.
John, and I've got to know you on our weekly calls and had interesting conversations. Is that kind of your psychological, emotional makeup? Is looking for big opportunities? Where are things going to? And I want to be there when it happens.
Yeah. So, there's two ways that I think about it, which is I never want to be first, but I want to be the fastest person second, basically. Like if the person who goes first doesn't blow up, like I want to be right on their tails, and that's done pretty well for me with crypto because of the speed that things happen and because of the ability to see the outcome on the blockchain. That's been a very, very important thing. It's actually funny because it's the same thing with surfing. With surfing, you'll get a group of people in a pack, and they'll line up in a certain way because they're expecting a certain wave to come through in a certain way. But if you go just outside of the pack, you'll get less frequent waves, but they'll be bigger, and they'll be better formed, and they'll be easier for you to catch because you'll be the only person there. And that's an analogy to my investing strategy, absolutely.
That's a perfect analogy for crypto in so many ways. Because
it really is. Like, it actually is super funny. Like, I'll be out in the ocean, and, like, there's a trade-off that I do, and the trade-off is how alone am I in the ocean, and how likely is it that I'm going to catch an epic wave? Because how alone I am in the ocean is, like, literally the only thing you can control for shark attacks is, like, if there are people around you. So it's sort of got that black swan element also in surfing, just like investing in crypto.
Wow. I think that tells a lot about your personality, too, as well, that, like, you're in this really unregulated early space, and you're like, this one is kind of maybe not where I want to be. Let me find another one that's very similar.
Yeah.
And that's a really cool framework, thinking about waves that way, because oftentimes some of the best opportunities are where you are outside of the crowd, but you have the conviction to make a play.
Exactly.
And you might not have somebody to reference, right? Because there's no one else doing the wave.
Yeah.
You can't exactly follow them, right?
Yeah, it honestly, like, I could get into, like, surf psychology and investing, like, for days. But basically it's exactly the same, and it's great, and I love it.
So talk us through this journey then, right? So you transitioned from cannabis, medical marijuana, or just marijuana in general, and you're going, okay, let's find something different. You jump into crypto, you get deep into Ethereum. You have a fascinating journey because I've watched you across previous jobs doing really well in, like, the corporate CeFi space a little bit.
I don't know about corporate, but also did that transition. It's funny, someone actually said, like, you did the corporate thing at MoonPay. I was like, dude, I was the 13th employee. Like, what do you mean I did the corporate?
But you know how it is, right? Compared to working for a DAO.
Yeah,
exactly. So talk us through that journey to where you are today and what you're doing now. Like, what are you focusing on today?
Yeah. So I mean, it's really crazy to hear you say that MoonPay is CeFi, but at this point, I guess
comparatively,
it's a spectrum, right? So, and they've matured a lot. So MoonPay was a big step for me. That was sort of in standardizing my pedigree of being in crypto. Did a lot of 0 to 1 stuff for MoonPay, so HR, talent, onboarding, operations, a lot of that stuff was just me for the first 6 months or so. And that sort of 0 to 1 mindset works when you're in, like, a relatively stable or controllable environment. But MoonPay in, like, a hypergrowth sort of setup was like you just always had to, like, build shit up and knock it down and start fresh and just keep doing it. And that sort of wears you out of it after a while. So I was looking towards, like, again, I found myself in the middle of the pack and was trying to get more to the outside. I heard about DAOs, Web3. One of our former colleagues, shout out Johnny Elmsley, actually was in another DAO way before me. And I talked to him, and he just was like, yeah, like, it's messy, but, like, you're solving real problems every day, and you're getting paid in the token. So you're basically getting paid in equity, in early stage startup equity. So it's like a binary thing. If it works, it's going to be a banger, and if it doesn't, you'll get experience that nobody else in the world has, because DAOs have only existed for, like, 2 years, and pretty much everyone's either, like, not to be morbid, but like people in this space either generally make it, burn out, and leave, or a more violent end. Like, there's really only 3 ways out of this game. And so it's like, if you have skills that nobody else has, that puts you way, way ahead. And it's actually gotten to the point where now I've leveraged those 0 to 1 skills to sort of flip that and use that as a framework to speak with developing companies in the Web3 space, and that's where the investor and advisor sort of side of my own thing comes in, which is, basically taking all those issues and then turning them into questions of, like, for example, one of the things for TradFi to DeFi was the internal structure. The structure of it and your guys' commitment to the structure and routine was the thing that gave me faith in it. So that type of internal information structure, organization, like, that's a really, really important thing. That as you grow, if you don't have that set up right, you're not going to be able to grow to the next step, the next 2 steps. And so I try and find little things like that I can identify with teams and then help them do, like, a gap analysis of, like, here's where you're at, here's where you want to be. Yeah, there's a pretty big gap here. How are we going to close that? So now I'm just working mostly with earlier stage stuff. One of those actually is TreatDAO, which is the sort of Web3 competitor to OnlyFans. And also now we are 5 months in. That's about 1 year and 3 months old now. And we're about 5 months in to the Treat magazine, which is a Playboy Web3 competitor, with a digital magazine and just basically a platform for online, not safe for work content creators to get alpha, share alpha, have a community, join a DAO. But yeah, that's TreatDAO, TREAT. I need smirching.
Nice. So before we get into any more on TreatDAO and just kind of back up just to DAOs in general, do you see that as kind of being the default organization for crypto projects? Is that what people should really be shooting for, or should they just do whatever works, right? And if you get to a size where that makes sense, then move into a DAO structure.
Yeah, I mean, well, how to explain this? So right now we're going through the westward expansion stage. There's homesteading going on. People are giving out shit for free because there are unknown risks. That's very much sort of the situation overall. One of those things is you need a lot of people to just go for it and just churn through whatever opposition there is until you figure out what the solution is. And that's very similar to where DAOs are at right now. One of the things that I explain DAOs as are a primitive, first of all, so they're under a class of primitives, and one of the classes or subclasses is like a business primitive. But just like every other primitive, they're sort of just the starting point, and until you sort of battle test them and stress test them, you don't really know how things work together, how other primitives come into play, until you do it. So there's two ways of thinking here, and the first way is the sort of pragmatic way, which is like, this is not anything new. I need an LLC, I need a tax identity, I need, all this stuff so I can pay my bills, I need a bank account. Just do an entity, legal entity, LLC, S corp, whatever. And then you have the mavericks. You have the people who are like, I will die on this hill. Like, I will defend this with my last breath. That, a decentralized organizational structure is the only way of doing this. And long story short, like, those people are just getting churned up and burnt out. Like, it's not necessary. There's been 2 or 3 times where we brought in a sort of external person, and they were like, why are you reinventing the wheel? Like, I don't get it. You don't need to use a DAO. It's just an option. It's not a necessity. And so in that mind, I would say we're very much in generation 0 still, or generation 1 maybe of DAOs, because now we're just starting to get like DAO tooling, like actual suites of tools that like payroll. Payroll's a fucking disaster if you have a multi-sig. It's just a disaster. Expenses, cap expenses, like operating expenses, all that stuff is like you're literally just one person trying to organize 7 people or 5 people on a multi-sig to pay bills. Like, that's broken. That's not innovative. So I say go one way or the other, and if you're going the DAO route, you better be an evangelical, crypto believer, because only the ideologues make it through that gauntlet.
I think it's a case of shiny object syndrome, right? When you get this new technology, people just latch onto it sometimes.
I mean, and it has to, like, that is the core driver of innovation, is, shiny things to toy, to application, to business, or to industry, whatever the, progression curve is. And I think that's correct. We are still at the shiny toy stage. And we're also at the stage where there's that sort of uncanny valley between, like, how much do we trust the existing systems and how willing are we to pay the existing systems as opposed to pay for the risk of the new systems. Like, at what point do you, cross the bridge or whatever? Like, at what point do you commit to being like, yup, like, this is the future, I have to go this way, or are we going to use the traditional stuff? It's like there's actually a very real risk-reward trade-off that goes on for all this stuff. Honestly, it's totally fucking unnecessary. Like, you don't need it. Just deal with the traditional stuff. You're going to have much harder problems to solve and much bigger coordination issues than, like, paying people on time. Like, it's the wrong focus. There are certain things that should be decentralized. There are things that do not need to be decentralized. I think that's the main takeaway, that people are still, getting beaten into their skulls every day when they show up to work in a DAO that hasn't figured this out yet. I mean, I know from experience, we're figuring it out right now. It's brutal.
Yeah, that, when you explain the problem of payroll and getting everybody on the multi-sig to
it's stupid. Like, it's just as difficult as you would expect it to be, except we're not all even, like, good friends. It's like an actual coordination issue.
That would be like, the whole C-suite of a corporation signing off on the payroll. It's like, that
almost
just
literally
doesn't make sense. That doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, that is the clearest analogy you could draw. Yeah. So there's that trade-off between control and, ideology, basically.
It's kind of funny that, and I know that for security reasons that, people have multi-sig that controls how the DAO spends its money. That makes sense. But it's like, but we get fed this whole, well, it's a trustless environment. That doesn't sound like trustless to me. That means everybody's got a gun to each other's head, and you said you better sign it because we're all in this together. Weird.
I mean, and this gets back to, like, the churn that I was describing, right? Like, when people were going west, it wasn't a straight shot. There weren't, paved roads and all that shit. Like, people had to die on both sides, like, on the settler side and on the Indian side. People had to die to get to that new reality. And, like, people are just still learning. Like, people are still, like, it just requires a certain amount of pain. It's like a bear market versus a bull market. Like, you just have to prove to people that there's no other way to do this. And if there is, they're just not going to get to market as fast as everyone else. I mean, that's one of the most frustrating things in a DAO is that, like, there are some people who would rather see the DAO fail than it succeed as a centralized entity. And that is something that does not exist in traditional business. I'm sorry, but you don't have anarchists doing dumb shit that is totally avoidable. Like, it's, it just doesn't exist. But there are people in this space because of their beliefs, and if they don't get to stress test their beliefs, they don't feel like they've made progress in the world. Like, literally, like, people see this as a mission in developing, designing, and creating the new future of work. Like, the churn is not in any direction. It is everywhere, and it is constant, and it is brutal. Like, we are effectively just pushing outwards, testing out as many different things as possible and hoping shit breaks, because then you get a response. Then you get a decisive answer of, did this work or not? And I'm just sort of fascinated to talk to other operators in DAOs, because there's very similar problems, and they're all very serious problems. And that gives me hope and faith, because as long as there are difficult problems, and as long as there are similar problems that are difficult, capitalism will find a way. Like, it's just, people will pay for that stuff. I'll pay for the solutions. So, it's very much a keep calm, carry on type thing. Ironically, it's easier to do that in a bear market than in a bull market. It's a lot easier to stay focused when everything's red. But yeah, I mean, I just trust the space to evolve as chaotically as possible, and just basically evolve into whatever it needs to be. Like, I don't try and say what it should or shouldn't be. I'm very much it's just gonna evolve as it evolves, and if there are big actors making big plays, it's gonna have a big size and big size result, and we don't have any influence over that.
I think if any complex system that's growing at a very fast pace, there's always going to be failures, right?
Oh, yeah.
And the key is to learn from them. But what people need to remember is that the system gets stronger even if certain people burn out and fall away from the industry. So, like you said, people come into crypto, then they get burned out and leave. But the crypto team benefits from their sacrifice.
Yeah.
And so what we're trying to create here and in these conversations is kind of like a shared knowledge. And it's really cool to see that you're talking with other DAOs to really try to build that shared knowledge, because they might have really effed up something, but you can learn from it. And that's a really great thing about the human nature, is that we can benefit from these things.
Yeah, it actually just made me realize, I wonder if there's like a DAO Insights channel. One sec. Search.
See, this live idea creation on the podcast.
Yes.
It's amazing, huh, Farm?
Well, because I know who would use it, and I know who would benefit from it, and I know who would build it. So John, why don't you take us through kind of, we've been talking a lot about DAOs, and the group you work with is TreatDAO. Yeah.
So I'm imagining there's a DAO component, and we're kind of in this era of crypto adoption where projects have DAO in the name. I think eventually DAOs, if DAOs do become super popular and they're used a lot, people will drop the DAO, kind of like how you don't say HTTPS before you go to your website, or worldwideweb.com. You just say,
maybe
Star Wars.
I think it'll be more like LLC.
Yeah. So tell us about TreatDAO and what you're working on.
Sure. Yeah. So I introduced it briefly earlier by saying that we are the OnlyFans competitor, and then I said we're the Playboy competitor, and it's all very confusing. But the easiest way to understand it is with the timeline. So basically, TreatDAO started as a sort of a joke, sort of as an airdrop. Basically, there was a random person on Twitter who sent a DM to one of the co-founders, Ashtoshi, and he was just like, "What's up? What's your address? I want to send you money. You look good." So she was like, "Okay, I'm not going to turn down, free money." So she sends him wallet address, and he sends her $1. And she just thought it was absurd. Like, she thought it was funny because she had posted a picture, and then a guy had commented on it. She had provided a wallet address, and they made a transaction. Like, not a novel concept, but, it was just one of those things where he said treat, and she was like, oh, that's potentially a good name for a token. Let's see if there is any tokens. There was one on ETH, so they launched on Binance Smart Chain. And the original idea was just to have a sort of marketplace, not safe for work place, for NFTs. And in that sense, the initial idea of TreatDAO was to be like the OnlyFans, or the OpenSea of not safe for work images. So sort of like the porn version of OpenSea. But then basically, they were looking into more of the functionality and where it might make more sense. And one of the things was OnlyFans. I mean, OnlyFans is an absolutely insane business model. And the only thing more insane than their business model is leadership deciding that they don't want to do that business model anymore of selling porn, basically. Selling amateur porn, to be more specific. And so one of the things was, we could do that. Like, we could just add messaging, tipping, minting of NFTs, because we already had the minting of NFTs and the marketplace for NFTs. So we were like, okay, if we make profiles and then do messaging and tipping and live streaming and all the other stuff that OnlyFans does, and we don't blow it up in a bad way, like it doesn't explode, that could be $1 billion business in a couple of years. That could be a substantial economic producer of value for these women, even just as a backup. Because one of the things that absolutely shocked me to my core as someone who's, been in online businesses for almost my whole life, was that they will hold up the money for 30 to 60 to 90 days for creators. And if you're earning like $12,000 a month, which I know a couple people personally who are, and you don't get that money, like, you're not going to be able to pay your rent. You're not going to be able to pay your bills. You're not going to be able to buy groceries, blah, blah, blah. It's over, basically. And for one corporation to have that sort of financial power over individuals in an entire industry was enough for me to be like, okay, blockchain actually solves this. Like, there's no financial overhead for operations for us, because it's literally just a smart contract. If this, then this. Sends it over to the person, that's it. It happens immediately. We have absolutely no ability to hold that up or anything. So in that sense, we have disintermediated the intermediary in the financial sense. And that was a breakthrough moment, because one of the main things there as a value add for creators, even as a secondary source of income, is that they can sell their NFTs on TreatDAO, right? They can sell them. They can go to www.treatdao.com or treatdao.com, mint their NFTs, and even if they sell them for free, they could sell 1,000 NFTs for free. The buyer just pays the mint, and it's like 4 cents, 4 to like 15 cents. And then what happens is brilliant, because since you have that proof of ownership through the NFT in the wallet address, what you can then do is you can do a combination of things. You can either incentivize the people to collect the entire collection and maybe say, hey, like, I'll do a special thing just for you if you collect the collection. If you do the whole collection, you get one of the one-of-ones, for example, special content for you. But the other thing is that if they then sell that NFT for any amount of value, let's say $100, the creator gets that residual royalty in perpetuity, which is a pretty bonkers idea from potential returns and intellectual property standpoint, because what that's saying is that in perpetuity, whatever wallet she inputted to her profile when she created that content, which is the receiving wallet for royalties, for the rest of time, it has the potential to earn revenue from the secondary market sales. And at a certain scale, that's a substantial amount of money, both for the models and for the platform. Even with our fees, 75% lower than OnlyFans, because it's just a bigger market. It's just crazy large. Like, when you actually start to do the napkin math on like what the revenues could be for a company in this space, just with the NFT stuff, it's actually pretty insane. So that's pretty awesome. And then the second thing was the magazine. We could see a lot of problems coming with the NFTs and just the not safe for work space in general, combined with crypto. And so when the idea of a magazine was floated, I was like, this is extremely important, because it's giving us a platform to basically say, hey, if you're a not safe for work content creator, come here, because we have actual information for you. We have a community. We have people who are engaged and committed to helping you get as many followers as possible and as much money from your audience as possible, because we have people whose jobs it is literally to coach women on this stuff. And we also create content and curate alpha into the magazine. But that's just the magazine as a not safe for work content creator platform. You can then abstract those insights from the not safe for work element of the content creation process, and you can actually abstract it to the entire content creator economy. And that creator economy is like it's massive. I mean, I don't think any one company has managed to really extract as much rent as possible from the creator economy, except for like OnlyFans, YouTube, maybe TikTok, but all the social platforms, right? And that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to create a platform, both on the cover of the magazine. Are we allowed to show images here?
Yeah, as long as it's not NSFW, because we do want
How
this to be...
NSFW are we talking here?
That's a great question. We've never had to ask that question before, so I don't know, John. What do you think?
I mean, I'll show you Marin's. Marin's is not nude. Marin didn't do it.
Perfect. Yeah, so long as there's no nudity, it's perfect.
We won't have to cross that bridge quite yet.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'll have to blur it if we do post on YouTube, but yeah. Fantastic. So this is a physical product. So this is different than like a lot of other projects. It's actually just a digital version.
So that's the more recent thing, is that we have gotten it printed. And you want to know what's crazy? We've had the highest conversion of leads from the physical magazine. We show that to people. They're like, that's brilliant. Like, how do I get involved? We landed like 4 ad sales in a single conference just from having physical copies of these magazines. And so, we're going to NFT NYC. We'll be going to a lot of conferences. So, in the future, if you're hearing this, if there's a conference, we'll probably be there. But realistically, it's really exciting because it's something tangible. Like, people in our space, I feel like are very tangibly, they're very touch deprived. We live in a very digital environment. We live in a very abstract environment. So it's very cool to have a physical token for your work manifested that you can sort of like show people and be like, look, it's a real thing. Like, I'm not just a crazy person on the internet.
John, I really appreciate the way you went about this and got involved in it, and the way that...
they reached out to me, actually. I was just an investor.
Right.
And they were like, we need help. And I was like, I know.
but it's good to see projects or DAOs that are actually addressing an issue. Now, I didn't know that issue existed of the holding people's money and that money flow and cash flow problem that they're creating for their quote unquote employees, right?
Mm-hmm.
And by using blockchain, that solves that, because when we talked about this Friday, Tyler, this whole technology trying to, they're running around with the solution trying to find a problem.
Forcing the fit,
You found the problem and gave it a solution, using blockchain, and it wasn't forced. It was like, wow, this could really work. And you started out in one area, you're expanding to more, you're actually, absorbing that whole space. And as far as I know, and maybe you can comment on this, I mean, are there your competition? You don't have to name it, but it seems like you're kind of in that space somewhat by yourself. The approach you use, at least.
Yeah. So this is one of the things that I've gotten really good at in my sort of marketing and PR hat-wearing element, which is like, we can be the superlative of like 6 or 7 different things. Like, we can be the first not safe for work Web3 project. We can be the oldest DAO that's truly community focused. We can be the oldest not safe for work DAO. We can be, all this stuff. And it's really, I don't know. There's a lot of different ways that we explain it. But I just lost my train of thought. So if you could just repeat that.
Well, it's Web3 OnlyFans has got to be the biggest catchphrase that everybody uses and everybody wants, right? Everybody's like, oh, there's got to be the next Web3 OnlyFans. And it seems like you guys have actually figured that out. You're in the very early stages of it. Yeah. And it's seen some pretty amazing success.
Well, it's all relative, and it's all how you track it. But I'm extremely happy with the magazine. We have gotten to the point where our most recent was for June, Stormy Daniels. So that was literally just through a team's connection, team members connection. And we're really just standardizing this stuff moving forward so that we have actual cover models, because that's sort of important, it turns out. We were sort of scrambling in the last month. But one of the big differentiators for us between our competition is sort of three things. The first thing is the fact that we are an actual DAO, for better or worse. And what that means is that we have, we were formed by a group of fairly ideological people, fairly dogmatic people in how things like decentralization and community sort of orientation should be. There's definitely been a lot of problems that have been caused by that. But as a result of that, we've also developed a lot of fairly innovative approaches to things, or at least we've, developed our own code base is the easiest way to put it. That being said, there's definitely, it's not necessary to do that. Like, this is the same conversation we were having earlier with, do you go out and risk the new stuff, or do you do the tried and true? If you're doing something that's already difficult, do the tried and true stuff. Like, that's the biggest thing I could say. So that's the first thing is the fact that we are a DAO for better or worse, and we are organically pushing forwards and in every direction sort of at the same time. That's the first one. The second one is our age. I mean, like I said, we're the oldest not safe for work DAO. I feel pretty confident saying that because DAOs weren't even a thing a year ago, let alone not safe for work DAOs. And also it's crypto, so you can say whatever you want, basically. But the bigger thing is that we never manipulated the price of the token. And that's, you can see it. If you go into the charts for the other Web3 porn companies, two of which are very well known, SpankChain and CumRocket, you can see.
You guys have a better name, by the way.
Exactly. And that's actually the fourth thing, which is actually the perception of our brand. So our brand perception is actually very, very strong. I actually wasn't even aware of that until 5 different people told me separately. They were like, you guys have your shit together. And I was like, really? Like, that is quite the baseline you must be evaluating me from. But yeah, like, it is like that we get that feedback a lot. And it's helped us say, like, hey, like, we are viewed as a professional brand. Let's not, like, post dumb shit. Let's not, pump the price. Let's not do stuff that makes projects fail, because in projects, you really only have one shot at building trust. And once you go up 100x and then down 98.6%, that trust is gone, like, just like your money. So that is a mortal sin in our founding team's belief, to have that sort of exponential run up, blow off top, and then price collapse. It's caused us to retard our growth in 4 or 5 ways, where we have literally, and I myself have also done it, because I am of the same cloth that I do not think that, you should just pump and dump some stuff because you can. Pretty much all the founding team could have pumped it if they wanted to, and we explicitly chose not to consistently, despite our competitors going up, and then they all crashed. And it's, organic growth is the best growth. You can put paid growth on organic growth, but it's very, very hard to put organic growth on top of paid growth.
I couldn't agree more. I think organic growth has been the only thing that John and I really been unwilling to budge on with our own stuff that we do. Is just organic growth is just where you get high quality, and we can just tell from the integrity that you're showing here, John, and that the power that comes with some of these early founding teams to manipulate token price is just, it's very tempting. It's very easy. It's kind of like you said,
it's
like
extremely easy. I'm not trying to empower anybody, but very, very easy. If you do it correct, like for $300 and the cost of a gas fee, you can be fully dark set up. No one will ever know who you are. But yeah, it's just not worth it, because you need the actual growth. You need the actual thing. Like, that's what adds value. It was funny because I was talking to a friend of mine about, like, should we do the paid route or should we do the organic route? And I was like, okay, well, where do you end up? Like, what's the desired outcome for both of those? And it's like engaged, intelligent, consistent contributors. And it's like, okay, like, one of these is not going to get us there. if you go the paid route, you're just not going to get the real people. And if you do, you're going to get them at the same rate or worse than you would have gotten if you just focused on building out the organic rate. Like, slow and steady 100% wins the race in this industry, and that's taken me, I'd say 4 years to learn, and I'm on my 5th year, so...
I think we've gotten a lot of wisdom from everything you've been sharing with us, Jon, and I know our group members will really benefit from a lot of the stuff that you shared with us. I'd love to know just maybe briefly, what is some way that TradFi to DeFi has helped you along this journey or been a source of networking or referrals or anything at all just on your journey?
Yeah. I mean, so one of the things that I pride myself on is my ability to thin slice or take a limited piece of information and extrapolate it into probable future with high fidelity. And one of the easiest things, one of the things that makes that the easiest is how well things are organized on smaller scale. And so when I joined the Discord channel or the Telegram channel, I joined some channel, I think it was Telegram. I don't actually remember which one it was. And you guys had scheduled something, you had executed it, you had recorded it, or no, you hadn't recorded it, but you posted notes afterwards. And just that operational execution, the basic blocking and tackling, as my mentor would say, that's the thing that matters when you're going into these groups. And that sort of immediate light bulb moment of oh, these guys are doing this really tedious thing correctly, which means they have a high probability that they're going to be doing the other things correctly, and they're going to have a high probability of attracting people like myself who recognize and appreciate that. So I think that, right off the bat was one of those, lightning bolt moments where I was I can evaluate groups in the same way that I evaluate investments because it's just my time instead of my money. And so comparing things to that baseline that you guys helped establish has really helped me both double down on high conviction communities like your own, but also cut the low conviction engagements, low conviction partnerships, low conviction communities, because I can hold them against a standard that I'm this is a baseline, and if they can't do this, it's exponentially less probable that they'll be able to deliver the outcomes that I need, which is being connected to high quality people who are consistent, reliable, and all that stuff. So it's been a very good baseline, but it's also been an expanding group, which has just been fascinating to see because it's cool. You guys, I've done a similar thing. I've grown my group from 3 to 280, and I just couldn't handle it at that point. You guys were getting to 220, 250. That's a maturity point. So I'm excited to see where it goes, and I'm excited to see how I can help with that.
Yeah, thanks, Jon. That's really helpful. I mean, there's some really good nuggets in there too. The ability to recognize when someone's doing the small things, that means they're going to probably do the big things really big as well. And so I appreciate that you noticed that. I think we do try to put a lot of care into that. And I mean, this podcast has been so full of value for our members. I'm sure there's a ton of nuggets in here, but if you had any one guiding principle, and I'm sure you probably have dozens, but what would be something you might tell somebody who's new into the space? Maybe they're new to TradFi to DeFi. They're just new to crypto in general. What would be some advice? You've seen 5 years of this, right? So I know you have some scars, you have some wisdom, you've already shared a ton of it. Is there anything that maybe you haven't shared yet that might be helpful?
Yeah, I mean, there's really only two things that I feel very strongly about, and there's really only two absolute truths in crypto. I feel the first one is just don't lose everything. Just whatever it takes. If you don't have income, don't lose your whole stack. If you do have income, have a plan. Don't be a forced seller. That's the number one rule in crypto. Do not be a forced seller. Do not put yourself in a position, whether it's through leverage, margin, debt, or otherwise just cash flow for your life, taxes. Never put yourself in a position where you have to do something financially because you are working with 15% of your operating capacity of your brain. So that's number one. The second thing is there's really only one way to learn crypto, in my experience. And I'm saying crypto overall. because in my opinion, it's like an impenetrable shield that looks super crazy and nobody really understands from the outside. And they're like, how do I get started? How do I pierce that impenetrable veil? There's so much stuff. There's such surface area. It's all so scary and pointy and sharp. And the answer is you have to choose one thing. You have to choose one thing that you care about already, and just find where that is in crypto, and then learn everything about that. Like, everything. Choose something that you already know, find it in crypto, learn everything about it in crypto, and that will give you a starting point or an anchor. But the point is you have to start from a place of understanding. So for me, trading, investing, I went straight into the trading and investing. I learned about the data and the sort of trust problem and all the anthropological stuff afterwards. I came from a trading and investing standpoint. I said anything that trades 24/7, 365 is a fundamentally new technology, and I need to learn more about it every day for the rest of my life, basically. That was the 0 to 1 thing, was I basically came from markets that, closed because they were weak markets, week-long markets, closed on the weekends, and crypto is 24/7. So for me, that was the watershed moment. But if you care a lot about voter rights, if you care a lot about AI, if you care a lot about any of the other things that crypto is attempting to solve, literally just type the thing you're interested in, and then crypto, and just Google it, and just read like the top 10 results, and like 8 of them will probably be crap, but 2 of them might be like, oh shit, that's the future of this industry. That's the future of this thing that I'm invested in, whether through my career or my interests or my hobbies. And that will be the lance that will help you pierce the veil. You have to have something solid that you already understand to take on the vastness of the unknown of crypto. So you really have to approach it like that, in my opinion.
That's really good advice. I think to summarize it, don't lose everything. And number 2, have an anchor. Very solid advice. I think anybody listening to this who's early, I would completely agree with that advice. John, this has been extremely exciting and helpful. Thank you so much for bringing so much value. Could you tell us a little bit about how people can reach you, learn more about what you're doing, any websites or anything that people can check out?
Yeah. I mean, gotta shill Treat. The website for Treat is TreatDAO.com. We'll probably have it in some notes or something, TreatDAO.com. And then me personally, I'm on Twitter at _JReynolds999. Also on Telegram at JReynolds999. And yeah, like I'm always, like my main thing is networking. So if you're interested in doing something, if you have a problem that nobody else has been able to solve, if you're looking for access to somebody that you haven't been able to crack, that's something that I like. I enjoy that sort of stuff, and I actually have like a quest list similar to like Skyrim with like, milestones and like focuses and desired outcomes and stuff. And I add to that contact database after every sort of interaction with people. So if you need help solving something, if you need to be connected to somebody in the crypto space, I'm trying to be one of the better connected people in the space, and help people get to where they need to be.
Awesome.
Yeah, John, you already are one of my most well-connected friends already, so I can speak
Who do I
to the
have to
audience
kill?
and tell them.
Is it Daniel Colleen?
So we haven't had him yet on the podcast, so we got to get him on next.
All right, so am I your best connected friend who's been on the podcast so far?
I would say so far, yeah. So it's between you and Dan, so
baby, it's never changing.
Yeah. So John, again, just thank you so much, man. It's always great talking with you. A personal friend of mine and John's, as well as friend of the show and community. We're so glad to have you. Everybody, please check out the links in the description. We'll put everything that John had mentioned. And of course, please do subscribe to our YouTube channel and our podcast. Share it with your friends and family. We hope to be a resource for everybody who's going from TradFi to DeFi. And I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Again, John, thank you so much, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.